Hello, this is part five, which of a series starting with part zero. So this is the sixth video in the series. And the picture you have up here is actually a trained neural network. And I trained it on a set of images from an engraver whose name is George Strutt, Strutt. I thought his engravings of trees were particularly interesting. He didn't have that many of them. I think there were maybe 32 altogether. And yet, by training a neural network on Strutt's data set, I was able to, create some interesting new trees that don't exist. So really, I'm going to go over some of my artwork in this video, and I think the thing to take away from this is I'm really interested in your artwork, right? I'm interested in what your choices are, your aesthetic choices, your artistic workflow, your artistic choice, or indeed your design choice. The things that you're going to see are things that happen to intrigue me. I have a wide variety, or perhaps an eclectic variety of art when we consider, classical art. And something to keep in mind, I would say most of the hybrid artist programmers out there, they're going to be just making things from text only. So that's one of the things you can do with AI art, is that you can create art from text. And in this particular case, some of this is created from text and an initial image. And when I chose an initial image, that you're going to see some echoes of that in the artwork. So when I first started, this is about spring of 2021, but I haven't been at this very long. I said, I want an apple next to a fireplace. And I used a program called Deep Days, and this is what it created. And I thought it was pretty interesting. It took a while to converge. So typically, this is almost uniformly true with all AI art programs. You're going to start out, and it's going to go over a number of iterations or steps. The early iterations are going to be somewhat fuzzy, if noisy, and not very clear. And then as you let the neural network continue to be trained, or you're getting more iterations out of this, you're going to get clearer, brighter colors and more definition. So I would say in most of the AI tools that I've used, that's the case. So you have to and your question is, well, when do you know how to stop? Well, this is the sort of million or billion dollar question. I would say it's your choice, right? When does it look good to you, and how long do you have to wait? How much time do you want to give yourself to wait? Because it's true that if you wait a little bit longer, you may get something a little bit better to your liking. This is some early work from Big Sleep. This is just a video, so I'll just play this video of something I did on Big Sleep. You can see it's starting to clarify some things. Some areas of the virtual canvas are changing. And it's interesting, actually, the dynamics of these things is to see, now it looks almost like a starry sky. So it's interesting to see how these evolve over time. It's a really interesting thing is, regardless of how many iterations you use, tracking everything and seeing how it evolves over time could be really fascinating. Sometimes you want to pick an earlier iteration of something, and that's what you want as your artwork. In other cases, you want to wait a little bit and see what develops. So I'm going to get out of there. This is a video that I created several months ago, and it was based on StyleGAN. I think StyleGAN 2 using George Strutt's etchings, the tree etchings. And so I'll go ahead and play this right now. What you're going to see is it's going to start out with what's called the WikiArt data set. And that's a collection of art. So you're going to see things that look like, paintings of people, paintings of other things. And then it will gradually transform into trees because I did what's called transfer learning. So I transferred WikiArt, art kind of pictures, and then on top of that, I trained in George Strutt's etchings of trees. And so that results in a video of people and other objects turning into trees. So it may be easier to sort of just pick one square out of the mosaic I'm going to show you and just pay attention to that over time. I do highly recommend. One of the people that I first met on my journey in the AI art area was Vlad Merzmensch, and he is also an ambassador to OpenAI. He does a lot of work, a lot of really creative work, and he has a blog that you can just follow and sort of follow some of his stuff. Now, all of my slides are located within the YouTube playlist. There's a link to a Dropbox folder which contains all the PowerPoint slides, so you can do the clink. So I mean, this is an early figure that I created essentially by going to a pre-trained network. So I went to a pre-trained network of painterly faces, and this is what it generated. So this doesn't exist anywhere except on my screen right now. And I thought it was interesting. I mean, it came out, it's good. It's good composition, I think. So I kind of enjoyed that. This is some other stuff that I've done. And this is a video, actually, of faces over time, sort of changing. This is very typically StyleGAN-ish. StyleGAN from NVIDIA will produce, if you kind of look up things on their website, you'll see a lot of things like this. So just sort of enjoy. Okay, so one of the things to sort of think about is you're probably wondering how was that created? This was using StyleGAN, and the video was created as follows. Within StyleGAN, there's something called a latent space. So latent meaning hidden. It's very high dimensional, and the way to think about it is kind of like a big square or a big box, because we can only really think, we're only good at like visualizing in 2 or 3 dimensions. So if you think in 3 dimensions, you've got a box, okay, and you've got all these, imagine all these little points in the box, and each point is a separate painting, right? So every point in the box, imagine, you were looking in the box and you identified a particular point in this 3D space, that would be a painting. And what you do with these latent space videos is you kind of weave your way around this box inside of it, and as you move gradually, the faces change. So that's what it just encounters, a new point, a point being a painting. There's some abstract art I did. I think this was from this might have been, I'm not sure if it was wiki art, it might have been from an abstract art pre-trained network. I did some work. I really like René Magritte, the Belgian artist, as he's a surrealist. So I took one of his original paintings called Personal Values in English. Personal Values, and so I did that, and I started playing around, tuning different things to see what I could create. This is from Lori Lipton. Again, it was an initial piece of art that the machine used, the machine as in the neural network, and then it created this, which is not part of Lipton's artwork collection, right? So it's in the style of Lori Lipton, if you will. And this is in the style of Johannes Vermeer, famous for the girl with a pearl earring. But I mean, he produced a lot of really interesting artwork. And so this is a painting that maybe he might have painted if he had, had a digital computer and AI art at his disposal. This was inspired by Geiger, who has a lot of things about bones, a lot of paintings and pictures that are sort of human anatomy. He was an artist that was associated with the movie The Alien, or Aliens. This is John Constable. Again, an initial image was used in order to create this. This doesn't look really anything like his other work, but it looked interesting to me because I like landscapes. Thomas Gainsborough, same thing here. This was an experiment with Gainsborough's. One of his paintings, I believe it was Mr. and Mrs. Andrews from 1740 to 50. And this is what came out, given the right random number seed and so on. This is Church. And I believe Frederick Church was a Hudson River Valley painter, if I'm not mistaken. And he has a fantastic painting at the Dallas Museum of Art, which is essentially icebergs, right? The piece may be called Iceberg or something like that. I can't remember exactly what it's called, but I used that as the initial image, and then I started twisting the knobs around and came up with this. This is Albert Bierstadt. Another interesting landscape. I produce a lot of work that was influenced by him. And when I say influenced by him, there's really two modes of influence for AI art programs. One is you use Clip or some other piece of software that can take text and image and correlate them and generate one from the other. So that's one mode. And the other is you have an initial image, which I tended to do. So I took one of Bierstadt's existing paintings and then made this. This is Adams, as in Ansel Adams. And so he never created this black and white, but I thought it was kind of interesting what the machine was able to do with inspiration on Adams' Yosemite photograph. So he did photography. Van Ruysdael, Dutch artist, very famous, created a painting using Van Ruysdael as a sort of inspiration. And then locally in the Nasher Sculpture Center, which is in Dallas, I found Carol Bove's work to be quite interesting. She's a sculptor. And so what I did is I took one of her, a photograph of one of her sculptures and created some, new photographs of sculptures that she hasn't created, but nevertheless showed a kind of I found interesting. This is a Russian painter. Rutkowski does art design, supposedly for tarot cards and maybe some other things. but I found his work interesting. Shinkawa does these kind of Mechatron transformer kind of machines, and I was able to take one of his original works and then use that as an inspiration for creating something entirely different. Sometimes you'll get, as you're going, what I did is I think I took a picture of the clouds outside, looking towards the west, the back of my house, and on the left was an initial. These are all synthetic clouds, but on the left were clouds from kind of early iterations, and if I let it go, it created this kind of very surreal clouds with extremely high definition, which again can look unrealistic. But there's two messages here. Is kind of whatever turns you on is a good thing in this space, right? Whatever you like, that's good. The other message is that sometimes the earlier iterations, like the image on the left, you might happen to like this more than this if your criterion is sort of realism. Using text prompts only, I created a bunch of different art. So these are examples, I think, from Van Ruysdael. And so what I did is I just entered text like a detailed painting of a landscape by Van Ruysdael or a cityscape by Vermeer or something like that. And then from text alone, it creates these images. And this was sort of interesting and was I spent some time in Exeter, England, and they have an absolutely fantastic cathedral there. And I used Exeter Cathedral as the text prompt and just to see what would come up. And for this one, I used a perpetual motion machine. I think I found the prompt on Twitter by another artist. And they said, hey, I used this prompt. So I used the same prompt, and of course it created something completely different. But I thought that was kind of interesting, a perpetual motion machine.